All right, it is 2:30, so welcome to this professional development on equity and access for all families. I am your host. We're from Solved, your professional development provider today, and this content comes from New York State Education Department TAIL Academy, which stands for Teaching Across Learning Environments. So we're going to be thinking about providing equity and access for families in our regular classroom environment, but also in any kind of environment, digital or face-to-face. I just would like you to know that this is being recorded today, and you will receive a copy of the recording, but I want you to be aware, and you can decide whether you want to have your camera on or not, but it's always helpful to me and your fellow participants for when you can have your camera on, especially if you're speaking, to help us see who's talking to us and build some community. So here are our norms for our meeting today. Please take a moment to just read over those. I want you to know that I believe firmly in starting and ending on time, so you will be out by 3:30. I ask that you also pay a lot of attention to the be here now. I know you've had a busy day and you have a lot to do after this presentation, but the more we can be together in the moment, the better. So thank you. And if you have any questions about these norms, please feel free to come off mute at any time today to participate, or you're welcome to put your comments in the chat. So I am Dr. Caroline Hoppenwasser. I am an instructional consultant for Solved. I have a doctorate in literacy, and I've been an educator in the public school system as well as in teacher prep at SUNY New Paltz for the past 20 some odd years. And I'm looking forward to talking with you about equity and access for families. So let me know who you are today. If you don't mind putting in the chat your grades or grade that you teach, or subjects, however you'd like to do it. I see some people are already putting in their schools. I appreciate that. I love to know where you're from. And also, what is your favorite part of working with families? What do you love about working with families right now? And then we'll look at challenges and ways to address them as we move on. But let's start with something positive. What is your favorite part? And as you put that in the chat, I'm going to go and share our agenda with you. So our essential questions are: what can educators and schools do to support equitable access to digital resources? And how does understanding families' funds of knowledge provide more equitable access to education? So we're going to define access and equity, and we're going to create a plan to identify and apply some funds of knowledge in your current student population. And if you aren't familiar with the term funds of knowledge, that is okay, you will be soon. Let's see. I am looking in the chat. Oh my goodness. So if I say your name from the chat and I mispronounced it, I apologize. But Angela says she's not sure she has a favorite part of communicating with families right now. And I feel that. We're gonna see if we can change that.
I'm not sure if we could change that. At least not this year. Hopefully next year. Because okay. I don't know if it's the pandemic that created this, but Lord.
Oh my goodness. Sometimes it's a bad batch, right? There's some years we just have to ride out, don't we?
Yes,
and hope that we get a reboot. So we'll see if we can find any strategies that might help this year, but definitely to set you up for success next year. I'm so sorry that's your experience. I wonder too if it's the pandemic. That's really made some changes in how we all communicate. Oh my goodness. So I love making connections with families in hopes of providing culturally diverse instruction. That's from Jezebel. That's lovely. Culturally diverse instruction. Sanithia says, I love engagement with my families, especially when we've created an open, responsive connection built on trust. So yeah, and building that trust can be tricky. And as we discovered during the pandemic, when we were doing it entirely online, that brings its own set of problems. But face to face, we have just
Excuse me, I can't hear you. I don't know what's going on, but it's.
Is anyone else having trouble hearing me? I'm getting the thumbs up from most people, so I'm so sorry. I'm not sure what that is. Beverly enjoys seeing different family dynamics. So let's see. Let's go a little further. I'm going to share a document with you in the chat that I call the note catcher. You're going to open it and make a copy. And I'm going to make sure I have the permissions set correctly really quickly. And this has all of the information that you need from today's presentation. So you'll have a copy of it. It has places you can take notes today if you would like to. Anyone with the link can edit it. And I'm going to put the link in again. So go ahead and open that and you'll see links to everything we're going to do today. So the first thing I want you to do is just take a couple of minutes and read the definition for accessibility and the definition for equity. I want you to think about the similarities and differences and any questions you have. So we're going to set a timer for 2 minutes, and I want you to think about these two definitions as we think about accessibility for families and equity for families. So be prepared to either come off mute and talk to us about that in 2 minutes when my timer goes off, or to share in the chat. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to read those. Let's talk thinking about what you noticed about similarities or differences between equity and accessibility. And please feel free to unmute yourself and share, or put what you noticed in the chat. You can also, yes.
Sorry.
Go
so
ahead.
For similarity, I would say that they should have the same access to the same type of educational opportunities and education. Sorry, I'm still at school.
That's quite all right.
All right, as far as differences, one includes their cultural background.
So equity also includes cultural background.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Thank you for sharing that. Who else? Thank you for coming off and sharing with us, Angela. Who else would like to share with us? Or are you putting something in the chat? Let me go look at the chat. Not yet.
Can I just add also that depending on the disability, that also may have a cultural aspect to it?
Can you please say that again? You cut out a little bit at the beginning.
Sure. Also, I think they can overlap a little bit when we talk about, one, equity is about the cultural aspect as well, but when we speak about disabilities, and it's not all disabilities, it's individual identities, can also come with a cultural aspect.
Right. Oh, that's a good point. And I like that you state that they can overlap, because it's not just one or the other, right? We're thinking about both and how we can best. I'm so sorry. I can't type and talk at the same time. It's the worst. How we're thinking about providing both. I'm sorry, I didn't see who said that, but thank you. All right, in the chat we have, I often find that access to equitable education does not always occur. I teach in a low socioeconomic, high transient community, and oftentimes the resources are simply not available in these communities. So equity and access is
Can I interject a minute? Sorry.
absolutely
It was my comment.
wonderful.
I guess I'm just also thinking of it like in a way to reach our parents. So a little bit off topic, but it applies, is the challenges between charter and public. So I teach in a public school. And when I say sometimes the accessibilities to these same educational experiences that the charter school may have down the block are not the same that we are able to get funding for or reaching these families for. And oftentimes there are cases, like I call them like of bribery, you'll get free uniforms, you'll get a discount at the cookies uniform store, and that doesn't mean that it's not equitable to all the low socioeconomic families in the community, because we don't all have access to that. And so that becomes a bit kind of difficult in the experiences and services that we are able to provide to our families, to make sure that the families who do need them are able to receive them.
Yeah, excellent point. So even though if you ask, what is America education for? It's to provide access and equitable education. That's
right.
Not how it plays out on the ground.
Even when it's the same community too that you're servicing, which is also kind of jarring.
Jarring is an excellent word for it. There are a lot of other words that I would say, but I'm probably, it wouldn't be professional. So we'll go with jarring, but yes, that's an excellent point. Samantha says, access will provide everyone with what is needed, but equity is more specific to ensure that those with any kind of particular need can receive what they need to bring them to a comparable level. Really beautifully stated, Samantha. I'm going to see if I can just pop that right into our chart. So when we're thinking about equity and we're thinking about access, there's many different barriers that are happening in our school systems, even right in the same district or schools in the same neighborhood, depending on how they're funded. So one thing that now I accidentally skipped a slide, but we're going to go back to it. When we think about this, and New York City schools say remote learning eliminates the need for snow days, and that we can all now go home and learn just the same, no problem. How do you feel about no snow days on a scale of 1 to 5? If you pop it in the chat, 1, it's a great idea. 2, it's the worst idea ever, or 5. So you can range. But I feel like 1 great idea, maybe if everyone had access to the same resources. but also children need snow days. But so as you can see, there's a range. And what would be interesting to know is if if we all had access, would we feel the same? We don't know, because we're never going to have that. But thank you for sharing. There's a lot of strong feelings. I thought there would be a lot of strong feelings about no snow days. So let's look at the digital divide. We're going to talk about the digital divide today. And those are the barriers to access that students have in New York State. This is research from not just the city, but the entire state. So I have different percents here. And you can read this. Oh no, the answers are showing. Oh no, oh no. Sorry about that. I hope you didn't see them. But if you look at digital divide by the numbers, you can also read this on your note catcher. What percent of New York households do not subscribe to broadband services at home? What percent do you think of our students in the state have no broadband services at all at home?
Hi, I just wanted to say that that exactly is a prime example of what I was talking about, where the charter schools were able to offer hotspots for the kids to go home with.
Yes, yes.
And we did it. So we had to fight to get
Okay.
those hotspots.
Yes.
In
So,
order for it to be accessible and equitable.
yes. And so, yeah, 50% of students in New York State do not have broadband. So if we're not able to provide access to hotspots, as Jezebel has pointed out, what are we doing? How are we able to say we're providing access on those snow days? So then we have percent of African American and Latino households do not have wireline broadband at home, and similar numbers do not have a desktop computer, because now we're talking about not just access, but equity. What percent do you think, 33 or 27? I'm looking at the chat. It's not 80. According to the research I have from New York State, it's 33. So we also then have the percent of New York's lowest income residents who lack a computer of any kind. So they're there trying to use their phone or go to the library, which you can't do if you are having a snow day because you can't get to the library, or maybe there's no one to take you because they had to go to work. There's so many barriers to access. So one of the things I want to share with you today, which may be helpful, and it's not the entire answer. We unfortunately are limited to an hour today, so we're not going to be able to solve everything, but I want you to know that some of the resources from the Teaching Across Learning Environments, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read and talk at the same time, from the Teaching Across Learning Environments Academy that are provided, and I have put links for you on your note catcher, are different ways to help connect families with internet plans and provide devices for students. So these are resources that you can come back and check into that I'm leaving you with. Whether they will be applicable for your families or not, I'm not sure, but hopefully you will find some resources to be helpful. And now we're going to think about access and equity together. So true or false, students can have access to the same digital tools and still not be receiving equitable education based on our definitions and decisions. I'm getting all truths, truths. Yes, absolutely. So even if in Jezebel's example of the two neighborhood schools, if they did all have the exact same access to those hotspots, they have possibly different students, even though they're in the same neighborhood, because we all have different kinds of students and we all come in with different cultural backgrounds. So today, in addition to just thinking about digital access and barriers to it, we're going to think about something called funds of knowledge to help us think about how we're making sure every student we work with is receiving as equitable an education as we can make it, because we control only what we control. So we don't have the money, we don't control the budget, but what can we as educators in our classroom control to help our students feel seen and known? So I want you to, for in the chat real quick, rate for me your understanding or familiarity with the term funds of knowledge. So 0 is, I've never heard of that. I don't know what that is. And 5 would be, I'm very familiar with funds of knowledge, and anywhere in between. We got 0, we got 2s. So a little bit, none, or a little bit. Awesome. Okay. Funds of knowledge is awesome. And if it's a new phrase for you, I want you to grab hold of it and use it, because every student you have comes with some amazing funds of knowledge. And they may or may not be ones that are considered the ones you need for school, but that's our job to figure out how to incorporate them, not the kids' job. So funds of knowledge are collections of knowledge based in cultural practices that are part of a student's and family's inner culture, work experience, and their daily routines and roles. So we're going to think about that and unpack it more together. And we're going to think about our own funds of knowledge as well, and how that helps us relate or creates barriers between us understanding our students' funds of knowledge. So according to the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center, funds of knowledge include the following. Families have abundant knowledge that programs can learn and incorporate into their family engagement efforts. Every family has its own special funds of knowledge. A lot of times groups in geographic regions will have cultural funds of knowledge or neighborhood funds of knowledge. Students bring with them funds of knowledge from their homes and communities that can be applied towards concept and skill development. Classroom practices sometimes underestimate and constrain what children are able to display intellectually, because they do not recognize and honor the funds of knowledge that the student comes with. So teachers should focus on helping students find meaning in activities rather than learning rules and facts. So imagine this, we've all done this. You come to our classroom, you learn the rules of our school. Okay, that is a fund of knowledge, but does that in any way connect with the students' home rules and understandings? Because there needs to be a bridge, not you come here and do it this way. We also are reaching out to learn how you do it, so we can bring in your funds of knowledge to meet you where you are. So let's look at that a little bit deeper. So I want you to think about it. It's you as the teacher or the school drawing on the experiences that students already have. They've come to you, even if they're little tiny pre-K people, with knowledge they've accumulated from their households, with siblings, their peers, their friends, their communities and parents. And they're really valuable to the students' lives and can assist the teachers in understanding the ways in which these experiences can be practically and meaningfully connected to your curriculum. So how can I take this fund of knowledge, link it with my students' life and understanding, make them feel seen, and link to my curriculum? So let's look at this awesome graphic of this iceberg. When we think about students' funds of knowledge, a lot of times we're thinking of the parts that are up here above the water. And you'll be like, oh, culture, let's talk about their holiday customs or their flags or how their people from that country dress. Language, music, food, all very important. But they're just the tip of the unseen giant iceberg that is a fund of knowledge for students. Yes, this is a frequent issue with multilanguage learning students, for sure. So the learned knowledge, behaviors, and practices shared by a close group of people, and you can define close in many different ways. So they're considered essential to one's life and hard to detach yourself from. So it's very hard to come to school and detach yourself from your language that you use at home, or the etiquette or the rules that you use at home, or the views or concepts of fairness that come from your community. They carry not cultural, but linguistic aspects, some seen and some unseen, just like in this module. So if we don't think about these unseen ways, we're missing out on a huge depth of understanding of what our children and their families are coming to us with. So we need to start thinking deeply about these unseen, under the water funds of knowledge and tap into them as teachers, because it gives us windows into our students' and families' lives. All right, so let's see what that looks like as we think about. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick example from my funds of knowledge, and then I'm going to ask you to think about yours. So I live in New York State now, but I was born and raised in the deep South. I come from Alabama and lived there for the first 35 years of my life, and most of my people are still there. So if we start thinking about our deep under the water funds of knowledge, it was very interesting. It's very interesting being a Southerner in a Northern place, because the etiquette there is very formal where I'm from. Titles are used out of respect. So when I was working at the university, my dean would say, Caroline, just call me by my first name. And I was like, oh no, sir, I will not be calling you Michael. My mama would come up here from Alabama and get me. I will be calling you Dean Rosenberg. The views of raising children goes with above. You say ma'am and sir. And when I say ma'am and sir here, I've had people say to me, I'm not old, don't call me ma'am. And I'm like, oh, it's not age. That's just that's the culture I was raised in. And there's not a lot of questioning. So these funds of knowledge may go with other cultures or family groups, but this is one of my particular ways. So attitudes towards age, elders are important centers of knowledge. Your granny is in charge of your family, and she is often the final answer. And the importance of time, notions of time. Time moves slower where I'm from. So here, when I would go to meetings when I first moved here, people would be like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I was like, no, wait, we got to stop and talk about how your cousins are and what the weather's like. So it's really important to know that, because if I'm a teacher in the North and a family from Alabama moves up here and I talk to them in ways that are too fast and I don't acknowledge them with proper terms of respect, I'm not making connections and building trust with families. So that's one way to look at it from my family perspective. And now I would like to ask you to think about that real quick for your family and put anything you can think of, maybe from your family, either share with us or in the chat, share with us. We'd love to hear what are some funds of knowledge that, as you think about this, you know, are particular to your close social cultural ties.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm from Haiti, and our country is a little different. Almost the same as the Southern, but a little more strict. So when we come in a room, I remember when I just came here, I came in, if I walked in the room and there's like 5 or 6 adults, I have to put every single one of them, and just to, if it's a man, I have to give them a strong handshake. If it's a woman, I have to embrace them. And this is how I was raised. So when I came up here, seeing it was a little different. People were saying hi. It was banned for me to say hi when I walked in. So this is not something that I was growing up in, and it's something that gradually I had to try to understand. That's how they say it over here. But even right now, I have kids on my own. I don't, I always try to teach them not to say hi. It's more polite to to say good morning or to say good afternoon or to say hello, and out of respect. But the word hi is not something that I'm used to, or although it's the culture in the north up here, but this is not something that I'm used to, or I encourage, or I raise my kid to do.
Oh my gosh, what a perfect example. And that makes me think of whenever I would say, hey, my mama would say, hey is for horses, Caroline. So it's a level of respect and politeness. And yet, if we as teachers don't also understand that many of our children may come from different funds of knowledge that are a lot less formal, when we have communication with students and families, we then have this misunderstanding, because I, as a teacher, may think you're being disrespectful, when in fact, you're just using your family's way of being. So part of what we're then have to do is consider, where do we meet in the middle, and how do we share and grow from each other's ways of being. In my culture, we don't answer what when we can't hear the question. We politely say, excuse me. Oh, nice. So thinking about now your funds of knowledge, and funds of knowledge based on what you know right now, thinking about what you know right now about the students that you see every day. What are some of the funds of knowledge you can see that your students are coming to you with? Oh, and while you're thinking about that, Lisette says, in my culture, we don't make eye contact with adult because it's a sign of defiance. In the USA, if you don't make eye contact, it's a sign of defiance.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that was a big culture shock here, because you don't make eye contact with an adult or your teachers. And coming here, my brother got into so much trouble because whenever the teacher says something, he will put his head down. That's a sign of respect. You don't answer back. And my mother got a lot of phone calls because of that. It's like, he's not being disrespectful. He's not making eye contact with me. Now it's like, make eye contact. I'm talking to you. So different culture, different.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, because if we don't think about it, it's not that instead of making generous assumptions that this is a different family structure or cultural structure, we're making assumptions that the students are being defiant or bad, right? We're labeling, and then we can label the whole family. Well, nobody in that family is respectful. And instead, what we're starting to try to do here, thinking about funds of knowledge, is identifying them. And you can say in school, here's what we do in this classroom, and define your classroom funds of knowledge. The problem with what happens usually is who creates the entire funds of knowledge and rules in the classroom? The teacher. And so the students don't have a voice, and their families don't have a place. So we need to be finding out, all right, if it's in this culture, it's quite possible the reason this student is looking down is because that's their sign of respect. I need to understand that and respect it, so I know what this student is saying to me and I can make sense of it. Oh my gosh, y'all are putting so many interesting things in the chat, identifying your own funds of knowledge. And so the first step is thinking about what you know and how hard it is for you to break out of your own funds of knowledge, so that you can start being aware and thinking about your students and their funds of knowledge, and how the impact of coming into a classroom or school that doesn't acknowledge them at all. What is the impact of that on learning? All right, so let's look at this. You have a table on your note catcher. I'm going to go to the note catcher. It is here. Oh, this is what we were doing. Your own funds of knowledge. And then here you have different ways to learn about funds of knowledge today. You can read, you can interact with this toolkit, or you can watch. So what we're going to do, yes, we'll resend the note catcher for sure. What you're going to do is choose which way you'd like to engage with this information. And we'll take about 10 minutes to do that. And you have a place for notes. You can put new learning, questions, and connections. And at the end of 10 minutes, I'm going to put you into a breakout room where you can discuss this information and you're thinking about it with other people in the group. So your job right now is to choose to read, interact, or watch. I'm going to set a timer. When it goes off, I will have opened breakout rooms that you can go into to have a discussion. If there are questions, please let me know, and I'm happy to help you. If not, your time to interact with learning more about funds of knowledge starts now. It seems some people are having difficulty with the links. So I am going to put them in the chat as well. Someone has put the YouTube in. I put the link to the toolkit in. I will put in the link to the article. I'm so sorry about that. Can't open which one, Carol? Oh, that one did. That's not going to the right place. That would do it. Here's the toolkit if you can't open the YouTube. And here is the article, and hopefully one of those will open. I'm going to go ahead and open the breakout rooms. And you will be able to join. And even if you haven't completely finished any of the resources, you can still discuss any thoughts or questions you have from what we've talked about so far today as well. So new learning connections or questions, and see if your colleagues who have joined today have any ideas to share. So I'm opening the rooms now. Have about 8 minutes. If you have trouble with breakout rooms, you can let me know. We also have Brooke here, who's our solved admin, and she can help as well.
I can break.
I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me know you couldn't hear me. I didn't realize I'd been muted. So as you come back into the main room, please feel free to put in the chat or come off of mute and let us know anything you learned from the resources today or the discussion in your breakout room.
So my name is Robin Franklin. I want to share my group. We pretty much talked about the Funds of Knowledge Toolkit, which was excellent. I found out a lot of things from the pre-K and early childhood programs, one in Peekskill and one in Brooklyn, that they do home visits to get to know the families. It was really excellent. Malika, I guess if you can share with us, this would be really good if the DOE would do this in the beginning of the school year, instead of waiting to parent-teachers conference to do this, to meet families. So I thought that was excellent. I learned a lot about the Funds of Knowledge, which was good. And hopefully we can use this in September with our students. And I'm going to definitely implement this in our school and speak to my principal about this, because this was excellent. If Malika could share what she told us, her school is in Brooklyn. She's there. I don't know if Malika is still here. She here?
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead, Malika, because I thought that was excellent.
Thank you. Actually, at the beginning of the school, we open our open house and also all the year, not just at the beginning. We share with the parents, we invite the parents, and we meet as a whole group for all the parents from my classroom. And we have diversity, which is great, and we share all the information, the cultural and all the cultural background to our unit, like from the building, what type of building, for the clothing, what type of the clothing, for the food, what type of the food that you're eating in your home. We can bring a picture of the family. We can bring the picture of or recipe of the food. And even we try the food in our classroom. We share everything as a whole class.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And I'm so glad to know that the Funds of Knowledge Toolkit was helpful to you. It's a really excellent resource. If you didn't get to look at it today, it's on your note catcher. And if the link didn't work, I've updated Brooke in the note catcher that I have and put the links directly. So we want to make sure that everyone gets that when you send out the follow-up email, so that we make sure everyone has links to those 3 resources. We have 5 minutes left. So what I would like to do is 2 things. One, I want to share with you on your share screen. On your note catcher, there is down at the bottom, a next steps planning that we don't have time to do in our hour today, but it's something for you to think about. So as you think about the different funds of knowledge from this iceberg, what you think you know about your students right now, and data sources or questions so you can learn more, because you also always need to be questioning, is this what I really know, or is this just what I'm assuming I know? And that's very different, right? We can't make assumptions. So this is the next step for you to think about, how can I find out more? So you can think about it to help with the end of this school year, but also how can I set up the beginning of next school year, like Malika at her school, to get to know everyone and their funds of knowledge as they're coming in. I would also like to share with you, we have at Solved 3 courses on family engagement. You're here at B, Equity and Access for Families. Next Monday, we'll have collaboration and communication. And eventually on the schedule, A will come around again, engaging parents and families in the learning experience. So on your note catcher, you can see a link to register for more free PD with Solved. So it'd be love for you to come back and talk about families more with me next week. And there's also a link to a professional development survey that we ask you fill out. It helps us improve on our professional development for you. So as soon as I find the chat, I'm going to share that link with you. And I ask that you open that survey. It's just 4 questions. And in our last 3 minutes together, if you have any further comments or questions, I love for you to share, and also take a moment to fill that survey out. And I will also let you know that you will receive a follow-up email with a link to view this recording, a link to the resources, and information about your professional development credits. So that will be coming in a follow-up. Brooke, make sure everyone gets their information. So please be sure to check with the email that you registered for this with. That's where that information will go. And if you have any trouble, you can contact Solved and we will help you. But Brooke, how long does that usually take?